You know, if you love our country, the rule of law, freedom and prosperity, you know nothing is going right in Joe Biden's America. The reason why lawlessness and chaos reigns is because of what we've identified as the new axis of evil, the left-wing biased press, permanent Washington, and the socialist takeover of the Democrat Party. Now, sadly, lawlessness is only a symptom, not the problem. At its core, our problem is that key people who are in key positions have bastardized that which makes our country great. They insist that government control, loss of freedom, poverty, unaccountability, and chaos is the American way. In truth, that is the left-wing extremists' way. Now, in my opinion, so long as these left-wing extremists remain in positions of power, this country will never be the United States ever again. Socialist Democrats know they won't be in power if we all unite under common cause, common principles, and common sensibilities. That's why our citizens have been placed at each other's throats by the left-wingers, so that one party can succeed at implementing their anti-American agenda. Now, one of the main culprits in keeping us apart is the left-wing press. The divided states of America cannot stand. A wake-up call in tonight's preamble. Joe Biden's lost control of this pandemic, as we said off the top. He's welcomed in thousands of China virus cases per week through our unsecured southern border. While Biden continues the unrestricted flow of illegal aliens carrying the China virus, the United States, in the meantime, has imposed vaccine mandates for all international air travelers. To most Americans, that makes absolutely no sense. It certainly doesn't make any scientific sense. So to prevent the public from focusing in on the cause of the latest surge, that would be Joe Biden, the biased press has undertaken a campaign to blame our rights and GOP governors, the victims of unscientific policies.
If you want to talk about cases right now, talk about Kentucky or West Virginia or what's happening in North Carolina or moving into Southern Virginia.
I'm asking you about your state, but I'm not going to ask you about West Virginia or Kentucky. I'm going to ask you about your state, and I'm just saying you seem to be very, very activated when it comes to fighting the mandate from the federal government. And I understand the arguments you're making, but what President Biden is trying to do is save lives. Now, you can think it's bad policy or it's unconstitutional, and that's fine. We can have that discussion. We already have. But he's trying to save lives. I'm saying to you, your way's not working.
Mississippi's Governor Tate Reeves was rather puzzled that Jake Tapper was beating up on his state simply because Mr. Reeves knows that abandoning our constitutional protections is a long-term disaster. Mr. Reeves also realizes that, quote, "I was only trying to save lives" is an excuse that every totalitarian has used throughout history to justify the suspension of the rights of people. But Jake Tapper isn't only disingenuous for attacking Tate Reeves instead of Biden, but it may not shock you to learn that Tapper doesn't have the facts on his side. As you can see, the website Statista.com, top 10 states for China virus deaths, are not just GOP-run states. Indeed, 5 of the top 10 are Democrat-run states. Apparently, the virus doesn't discriminate based on party. But those who follow science, not political science, already knew that. But it begs a question. When was the last time you heard Jake Tapper berate any Democrat governor in the manner he berated Mississippi's governor?
Whether you say it's a lagging indicator or whatever your argument is, Mississippi now has, if it were its own country, the second worst per capita death rate in the world, behind only Peru. And I'm saying, are you going to try to do anything to change that? And I'm not hearing an answer.
Well, what I have said to you repeatedly, Jake, is that Mississippi has taken action. Mississippi has seen a significant uptick in the total number of Mississippians that have gotten the vaccine. We've seen our case numbers have fallen dramatically in the last 2 weeks. And so ultimately, as I have said, deaths, unfortunately, is a lagging indicator. We've seen cases, again, cut in half in Mississippi. In these other states that you refuse to talk about, perhaps because they have Democrat governors, you don't want to talk about them. But the reality is that you and the president and so many other people want to make this about politics.
The governor of West Virginia is a
Republican. This virus is not just attacking Republicans in red states.
Former New York Governor COVID Cuomo, Governors Gretchen Whitmer, Phil Murphy, and Tom Wolf All these people threw China virus positive patients into nursing homes, needlessly killing thousands of our most vulnerable citizens. But you never saw Jake Tapper speak with such disrespect to any socialist Democrat governor, because Mr. Tapper and the majority of his network are busy running interference for and excusing the incompetence of and culpability of the Biden administration and other socialists. Americans can't unite behind principles that would normally punish such idiocy. One other thing. The deaths per 100,000 for Mississippi are 310. It's 306 for New Jersey. Not much separates the death count, but a whole bunch separates the level of freedom and liberty preserved in the GOP states versus the left-wing states. For all the lockdowns, anti-religion bias, mandates, and economic destruction, the outcomes are similar in both GOP and Democrat socialist states. In other words, GOP states are getting roughly the same results the Democrat states are getting, and the citizens of the GOP states get to remain American with their rights intact, despite the best efforts of outlets like CNN to pretend that socialists are at all competent. Some left-wing press outlets are finding it hard to hide the truth from their viewers. They're either doing this because even the most uninformed liberal viewer knows something is seriously wrong in Biden's America. And if the press tried to maintain the fantasy that everything is peachy, well, they would lose even more credibility than they've already lost. Or these left-wing press outlets have been genuinely shocked that putting a morally bereft political party in charge of America is having such devastating results so quickly. Either way, the cracks in the proverbial dam are forming.
Chuck, good morning. It's good to see you. So we can talk about the border crisis. We can talk about the period of about 1 hour on Friday, where we learned that the drone strike that had been touted as an attack and a victory over ISIS actually killed a group of civilians, including 7 children. France recalling its ambassador from Washington because of that nuclear deal they were cut out of between the United States and the UK and Australia. And also the COVID booster news. That all came on Friday. How is the White House managing all this, and what do you expect to hear from the president at the UN on Tuesday?
And after Willie Geist there went down that partial list of everything Biden is screwing up, the always condescending and reliable left-wing Chuck Todd responded with uncharacteristic honesty and candor.
Well, look, I think he's got a pretty big credibility crisis on his hands, because all of these problems in some ways showed up after he said something basically the exact opposite. Afghanistan withdrawal wasn't going to be messy. This wasn't going to look like Saigon. The booster shots, he came out and essentially said 8 months and even indicated maybe we should start it as soon as 5 months. Now we're not sure if anybody under 65 is going to get a booster shot. So, he's had, and of course the border has been, whether this is, we can talk about the border problems. You could say there's years in the making, but it's pretty clear we have a bigger problem now than we've had in years. The UN speech, look, he's got some credibility issues on the world stage, make sure that people still view America as not just a stable democracy, but a competent leader of the free world.
Credibility issues. Just 10 short years ago, the American people would have never accepted totalitarian edicts from their government. Just 10 years ago, the majority of Americans would have seen one crisis after another and demanded that those responsible be removed from government. Just 10 years ago, we couldn't fathom that a sitting occupier of the Oval Office would promise to leave no American behind in Afghanistan, but did. Would promise no vaccine or mask mandates, but is trying to institute them anyway. Would promise to restore our credibility around the globe, only to succeed in undermining it. The only reason why the entire Biden administration hasn't been frog-marched out of D.C. is because of all the members of the new axis of evil. They are committed to making sure, no matter how much harm Biden does to your family and to our fellow citizens, that leftists remain in power to do that harm. If America is to ever be united behind timeless American values ever again, the left-wing press, permanent Washington, and the socialists who have taken over the Democrat Party must be rejected by the vast majority of our people, and their anti-American values disqualifiers from them ever serving in America's government.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.